think he's up. I think he's up. Thanks, Chris. It's good. Okay. We have before the court at this time case number 601954. Pardon me. 602312. That would be defendant A, the state versus Bobbie Green, and defendant B, the state versus Leon Morton. And for the record, both defendants were charged in a three-count indictment. Counts 1 and 2 were involuntary manslaughter, a felony of the 3rd degree. Count 3, reckless homicide, also felony of the 3rd degree. The plea on April 12th, I believe, as to Ms. Green was to negligent homicide, a misdemeanor of the 1st degree with a possible jail term of up to 6 months, a fine of up to $1,000. The plea as to Mr. Morton was to count 1 as charged, that is involuntary manslaughter, with a possible prison term of 9 to 36 months, a fine of up to $10,000. We did not get a pre-sentence report on either defendant. It's not necessary in the case of a misdemeanor. And with respect to Mr. Morton, first of all, there was an agreement that he would serve a term in prison, the length of that term to be decided by this court. And also, of course, we had a fairly recent pre-sentence report as to him. The sentencing was set for today's date in order to permit representatives of the victim to be present and to be heard. So, with that in mind, I'll first allow the state to be heard. Ms. Royster.
Your Honor, just briefly, as this court is aware, the victim in this case is 71-year-old Annie Williams. Ms. Williams was a mother, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother. On the day in question, July of 2015, Ms. Williams was at the home owned by Leon Morton and Bobbie Green to visit her great-grandchildren. These great-grandchildren were the children of Leon Morton. She had done this before. Ms. Williams pulled up to the house. She got out of her vehicle, and at that time, another one of the adult grandchildren were on the steps of the home, yelling to her to get back in the car. The pit bull that lived in the backyard of Leon Morton and Ms. Bobbie Green had gotten loose. And Your Honor, this wasn't the first time that that pit bull had gotten loose. This pit bull would get loose often. It would chew through the fence. It would chew through anything that they tried to hold this dog in the backyard with. This was a dog that the defendants essentially raised. This belonged to a younger son of Ms. Green. That son dropped the dog off when it was a puppy and pretty much left the state and then was later incarcerated. So the two of them raised this dog. They were the only ones that can go anywhere near the dog. They took the grandchildren there. Ms. Green actually ran a daycare out of her home as well. No one was allowed to go in the backyard, only Ms. Green and Mr. Morton. And that included treating the dog, because they did give the dog medical care before. That includes feeding the dog and any care that that dog needed. So at this time, when the victim was getting out of her car and the other grandchild was standing on the porch saying, "Go back," she knew how vicious that dog was. Both of the defendants knew how vicious that dog was. That grandchild that was yelling for the victim to go back had called Ms. Green. Ms. Green, I believe, was coming home from church. And she called Ms. Green and she told her the dog was loose. That grandchild would not even try to secure that dog. Ms. Green was on her way home to secure the dog, as she was one of the only two handlers of the dog. When Ms. Williams got out of her car, the dog immediately attacked her, taking her to the ground and pretty much mauling her to death. The cause of death was asphyxiation, crushed her throat. Now, Your Honor, I've already told you about the different ways that this dog had tried to be secured in the backyard, that it failed. As a sentencing exhibit, Your Honor, with your permission, I would like to hand you States Exhibit 1A through 1H, which are photographs of the backyard. They've had it in discovery. And just for the record, Your Honor, this was all handed to Defense Counsel in discovery, along with the report from the officers that they took it on the scene right after the incident.
The rules of evidence do not apply strictly in the case of sentencing hearings. I will allow them for whatever perspective they may give.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm handing you States Exhibit 1A through 1H. Specifically, Your Honor, drawing your attention to States Exhibit 1F to 1H. Your Honor, 1F is another angle of how Ms. Green and Mr. Morton tried to push the back of a car up against a hole where the dog previously got out, and as you can see from that photo, it was not working. 1G is another hole in the fence with another object pushed up to the fence, trying to cover a hole where the dog had chewed through the fence and escaped again previously. States Exhibit 1H is a garage that abuts the back of the home, and the defendant chewed through the wood of that garage in an attempt to get out as well. Your Honor, both defendants had warnings from neighbors. Neighbors had actually spoken with them requesting that they got rid of that pit bull. Neighbors were pretty much captives in their home every time that this dog escaped. On the day that Annie Williams died, neighbors came out in an attempt to help Annie Williams. Ms. Green also arrived at the home to find the dog basically crushing Ms. Williams' throat. A neighbor came out with his gun and he shot the dog. Once he shot the dog retreated to the back of the home. And Your Honor, the last set of photos I would like to present to the court for sentencing is Sticks Exhibit 2A and 2C. Your Honor, 2A to 2C. 2A shows how the victim was found in the front yard after being mauled by the pit bull. 2B shows a cleaned up version of the wounds in which the dog crushed her throat. And 2C again is just showing you a different angle of the dog bites. Your Honor, this incident has pretty much tore the family apart. I would say all of the family on both sides have been affected by what happened in July of 2015. And we do have some family members here that would like to speak on behalf of the victim, Annie Williams, in this case, Judge William.
As I previously indicated to you, a limited number can speak.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You set down your purse, please.
Your Honor, this is Annie Williams' daughter, and she would like to speak to the court. Can you please state your name to the court, please?
Secunda Ann Williams,
Spell your first name.
S-E-C-U-N-D-A.
Thank you.
I don't know what to say, but I was in Tallahassee, Florida at the time of my mother's death. I'm not going to let it go by that a dog killed her, because she had been going to that place when I was here from March 5th, 2014 to October 31st, 2014. So I don't understand what went wrong, and I don't understand this prosecutor representing my mother, but justice shall prevail some way and somehow. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
And Your Honor, this is the granddaughter who actually lived with Annie Williams.
Thank you.
State your name for the record.
Secunda Leah Star, S-E-C-U-N-D-A.
What would you like to tell me?
Sir, my grandma took me and she raised me. She taught me everything I know. And I wake up one day for her to take her.
You have to speak louder so the court reporter can take down what you have to say.
So my grandmother raised me and took me in, and she taught me everything that I know now. And to wake up one day and for her to go with me has been hard for me.
Thank you very much.
Your Honor, this is another one of Ms. Williams' granddaughters. State your name and spell it.
Tashia Star, T-A-S-H-I-A.
My grandmother took us in when we went into foster care. And she raised me and Secunda together. She was a mother figure. She even took care of his kids, Lanaya and Lele. And for her to just be taken away like this, it's painful. She taught me everything have to hear her call my phone every day and talk to her. It's hard. It's so hard to not have her around me no more. And
It's okay. Thank you.
Your Honor, as you see, this is a very, very tragic incident. The killing of Marlon Annie Williams was also witnessed by two of her younger grandchildren, great-grandchildren, the ones that she was actually there to visit. They're not here. Some of the family thought it would be too emotional to appear before the court today. So they've sent you numerous letters expressing how they felt.
I have read all the letters.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state is requesting, and the family is requesting in this case, prison time for Bobbie Green. We know that hers is a misdemeanor and is lower, but we are requesting local prison time for her. And the family has asked me to request the maximum prison sentence for the defendant. I think it's very important to hold both of these defendants accountable, especially for an incident that they had numerous warnings on, and that could have been prevented. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Royster. Mr. Maxton.
Yes, Your Honor. The facts of this case are pretty horrific in that Ms. Green has been torn apart by the situation. So her and the victim were long-time friends. The victim had been by the house many times. Ms. Green feels extreme sympathy for his family, for friends of hers. She thinks of his family herself. Nobody can turn back the hands of time. What happened was Carla was great suffering herself. If she could go back to that day, maybe something would be different. It's pretty much torn her apart. This was her friend, and that's about all we have to say on that, Joe.
Ms. Green, is there anything you have to say? You can stay there or come to the podium, whichever you prefer.
I have known Miss Williams for about 18 years, and we became friends. And I loved her. We shared the grandchildren together. On that day, I apologize. I wish I could have done something more to help. But I did whatever I could on that day. And God knows nothing was intentional.
Thank you. Mr. Goins?
Pretty good, John, good counsel. On behalf of my client, Mr. Morton, Your Honor. Mr. Morton has an opportunity to reflect this event, Your Honor, while he is incarcerated. We have had a whole long conversation, John, talking about this event. This event has been life-altering. It's caused a great amount of depression and sorrow from this incident. My client takes total responsibility without limit, without abridgment. And as of our last meeting, Your Honor, my client said it's his fault. Not his mother's fault, not the animal's fault, not the victim's fault. It's his fault. My client has repeatedly said it over and over again that he wishes he could fix it, but knows no way to fix it. faults, some period of incarceration will begin fixing him, but he knows it's not going to bring back his way. He accepts that he made a series of poor choices. First poor choice was a happy animal. Second poor choice was that he was not there that day. He left that morning quite early. When he returned home, he found this situation. He simply prays to this court, that this court look at these events in the totality of the circumstances. The most important circumstance is that this was a sad event. I do believe my client has something to add, John.
Mr. Morton?
Change it. I can't. Ever since it happened, thought about it every day. All the time, I haven't slept. Talked to my kids, traveled with them. Well, taking on a dog that she didn't take on. I thought I did everything I could do to keep it contained. And I apologize. And I know they hurt. Well, I wish I could change it.
Thank you. I'm going to need a few minutes to write this up. Okay. There's no way, of course, that anything I can do here would not be considered somewhat arbitrary, and no way I can have what might be considered a just result. I'll do my best. Ms. Green, well, first I should note that there's been some suggestion that, you may be seated. There's been some suggestion that the dog had previously attacked others, whether other people, other animals. In some of the letters I've received, there's suggestion that that happened. There's been no evidence, however, of any previous attacks. Ms. Royster has shown that the dog would get loose, and that in itself is evidence that both defendants failed to control an animal. And we know that any animal has instincts. People have instincts as well, and may act on those instincts no matter what you do to control them. But you should have known that, and especially when you could see that the animal had gotten loose previously. At the same time, Ms. Green, I don't think that you consciously recognized the dangers this animal created. I think that what is appropriate in this case for you, first, since this is a misdemeanor, I do have to impose a jail sentence, and that will be the maximum of 6 months in the county jail plus court costs. I'm going to suspend the time, however, and place you on probation for a period of 2 years. And other than following the rules and regulations of the probation department and paying your court costs, the only other condition is that you are specifically ordered not to own, keep, harbor, or have custody of any dog whatsoever. I don't care if it's a miniature schnauzer. I don't care if it's a puppy. You are not to have control of any dog while you're on probation. If you report regularly, pay your court costs, do not commit any violations of these orders and regulations, at the end of the 2 years you'll be done with probation. If you violate, you are looking at doing that 6-month jail sentence. Mr. Morton, I appreciate that you accept responsibility. I assume that in part that was because you are responsible, and also in part because you wanted to spare your mother the possibility of having a felony and maybe even going to prison. Again, we have a situation in which I don't believe you fully appreciated the dangers that this dog created. At the same time, you knew that it was a pit bull. You knew that it had the ability to get out, to get loose. And I think the appropriate thing here is to sentence you to Lorraine Correctional Institution. That will be for 30 months plus court costs. You do get credit for the 106 days you've been in jail since your arrest in this case. And remember, your sentence does include an additional 3 years of post-release control, which is mandatory. And that means that when you get out of prison, you still will have to report regularly to a parole officer You'll have to meet whatever conditions they impose. And if you fail to do that, you could be sent back to prison for up to half your original sentence again. Is there anything else that we need to address, Ms. Royster?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Maxton? Anything else? Anything else we need to address? Okay, and Mr. Goins?
Yes, Your Honor, my claim is basically being defended, Your Honor. We've asked to be paid into the courts, so fine, and so on and so forth, Your Honor.
I am not going to do that. I see you were retained counsel. He will be able to make his payments on court costs either from his prison account or upon release when he's on post-release control. Right now, just a moment, I can tell you his court costs, as of this morning, were just $110. So it's not too heavy a burden. Is there anything else we need to address?
Nothing further, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Oh, I have the paperwork. Exactly. Right. Bobbie Green. Okay, this is just a draft, but that's good enough for publication. Thank you, Rich. I appreciate your work here. Thank you very much, Paul.